My name is Jason Van Zant, and this is my board game Engines of Enigma. I'm going to take a few minutes and walk everybody through a couple rounds of gameplay and show us some of the unique quirks and features. To start Engines of Enigma, we must build our character. Characters consist of action cards. Action cards are used for everything in this game. They're required for skill checks as well as combat. Each character starts with 9 action cards, 6 base action cards, and 3 class action cards. The way we choose these cards affects the character. I'm going to create a damage based character, so we start by choosing 1, 2, 3 damage cards, 1, 2 defense cards, and 1 support card. Now, support in this game is more about hand management, how quickly and efficiently you can get through your action deck during combat. Class action cards, I'm going to pick 1, 2 damage card, and 1 support. This is our character. We're going to check out the cards before we start the actual game. These cards are all class action cards. The cards are all designed to synergize with each other, but some work better than others. Our game begins in the lab. The whole game takes place on a series of these cards. These are called the exploration cards. Now we refer to the exploration codex. The first page of the exploration codex. This is the lab. Painful sharp white lights sear your watery eyes as you blink away the tears of a deep chemically induced sleep. Again you reach to wipe them, and again your arm is met by the sudden jerk of some unknown retention device. Orange-suited figures calmly bustle about the laboratory. From the bed you can see all manner of shiny metallic equipment, some undeniably medical in nature. An alarm shrieks out of the commotion, sending the orange suit scrambling. Seconds later, a small warm hand touches your forearm. Above you, a delicate female form resides, her compassionate eyes bearing down, unnaturally large and as clear as the crystal seas. Thin lips curl into a tender smile, and words clear as day sweep through your cerebrum. This is your only chance, the psychic voice proclaims. Get to the elevator and head down. I'll interface with you again once you reach the subfloor terminal. She eyeballs you with a sardonic expression that says, "Don't get sidetracked. Go straight to the elevator and head down." Before she runs off, you notice small transparent plastic cards sticking out of her apron pocket. After we read the scene description, we move on to the scene resolution, and this is required before we turn the page. So we have a few options here. We can attempt to steal the plastic card as described above from the alien woman, or we can proceed straight to the first encounter. We can avoid the first encounter if we have 3 innate worth of actions. This brings us to skill checks. This is a huge part of Engines of Enigma, and skill checks require action cards to accomplish. Each action card has 2 or 3 different ticks. Ticks are slang for your attributes, your ability to perform the task to complete skill checks. So this card has focus, intellect, and another focus. The base action cards have 2, so this one has might, focus. This one has focus, intellect, intellect, innate. These are 2 more class action cards, so focus, intellect, focus, intellect, and so on. Each class has their own particular skill set, their own attributes that they perform better than others. There are 4 attributes in the game: might, focus, intellect, and innate. Focus is more like dexterity type skills. Intellect is more computer related. Might, of course, is athletic checks. And innate is your ability to interact with NPCs, skullduggery, things like stealing. And now, referring back to the Exploration Codex, we're going to try to steal the plastic card from the alien woman. In order to do that, we need to contribute the correct amount of action cards to perform this. So we need 2 focus and 1 intellect. So here's the focus. Here's the focus and intellect. So we can use these 2 cards to execute the skill check and steal the plastic card from the alien woman. Now going to the legacy deck, we check the number. This is legacy card 001. Pick that up, turn it over, and read it. You expertly swipe the thin plastic card and she didn't even notice. You breathe a sigh of relief and place it carefully in your waistband. Hopefully, crime pays. Keep this card in your legacy deck. Now the legacy deck is just somewhere over here, anywhere, because it'll come back up later in the game. After that skill check, we move on to the next in the series of events. So we can play 3 innate cards and avoid the encounter, or we can proceed to encounter 001. Before we move on to the encounter, we've got to remember that these 2 cards we contributed to the previous skill check, they will not be available until the second round of combat. They go in our cooldown pile. Combat in EOE will take place on a hex-based map. This is just used for reference, and I borrowed it from another game. This represents our player. These represent our 2 enemy monsters. To begin combat, we make sure that our action cards are shuffled. The action cards that we've used for skill checks make up our cooldown pile. We draw 3 cards for each round of combat. This is our action draw pile, and this is our hand. In combat, you can play all the cards in your hand, or you can save them for the next round of combat. To begin the game, your maximum hand size is 5 cards, so keep that in mind. Combat relies entirely on your action cards. We've got play the top card of your draw pile, look at the next 3 cards in your draw pile, and your next weapon deal +2 damage. Equipment in Engines of Enigma is a huge part of the game. In order to craft equipment, you must accumulate different materials. Materials are gathered through skill checks and defeated opponents. Equipment is arranged in sets. So sets allow for special functions and features of these. The way equipment is used is by activating an action card, base action, as well as a mastery action. The base action any class can use. The mastery actions require a special tick. So the mastery tick for this is focus. The base action for legs, which is a starting piece of equipment, allows you to move 2 and deal 1 damage. Your mastery action is move 2, deal 1 damage to 2 hex adjacent. We're going to refer back to our cards in hand and decide how we're going to engage in combat. So each card can be used for movement, activating equipment, or the description on the card. We're going to use this card to move, so we're going to move our character 2 spaces. 1, 2. And I think we're going to put this card in the cooldown pile, and we're going to end our turn there. Combat is a huge part of EOE, and EOE's combat revolves around an interesting design for artificial intelligence that I came up with. You have behavior sheets for each monster, and you have the logic slides which dictate actions. So we choose 2 logic slides randomly and place them over the behavior sheet. This monster or enemy unit has an initiative of 9. His strategy is to surround the player. That's what this icon means. His movement will be 2. His range is 1. He's a melee based unit. His first attack, this icon means he targets the strongest player, the player closest with the most hit points. He'll do 2 damage. He has a shield of 2, and there's no special action. This is the second enemy unit. His initiative is 16. His movement will be 1. Same strategy. Try to surround the target. His range will be 1. Another melee unit. His first attack is 1. His defense is 2 shield. And his special is trauma. Trauma cards are these cards. And these cards are added to your action deck. And they're placed on top of your cooldown pile to be reshuffled in when you get back to them. And all they do is they're unplayable cards that clog up your deck. So, Engines of Enigma, the player always goes first. Player's initiative is seen on the top of the card. We're playing solo, so none of that really matters. So the two enemy units, this one's initiative is 16, this one's initiative is 9. So this will be the 16, this will be the 9. 16 and 9. So 16 goes first, and we've already made our first move. So the 16's movement is 1. This one's movement is 2. So 1, 2. Now he's adjacent to the player, so he's going to use his first attack. His first attack is 2. So we don't have any way to block this, or we can look at the next 3 cards in our draw pile and add any one to hand. Perfect. So 1, 2, 3. We don't have any way to defend against that attack, but we can certainly take this card. If we can get to the back of it, we can deal 5 damage. So we'll add that to our hand, put the other cards in the cooldown pile. Alright, so we go back to here and we take 2 damage. This is our player board. So we start at 16, 15, 14. Now the player has more cards and is able to do perform more actions before the end of the round. It goes back and forth until the player decides that he's done. So my strategy, I think, is going to be, I'm going to try to get behind one of these creatures so I can perform this backstab attack. So I'm going to commit. We already played this card. That was in the cooldown pile. So I'm going to move 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 to get to the enemy's back. That's this card in cooldown. And I'm going to use this card to deal 5 damage to the enemy creature now that I'm behind him. So this is the creature right here. He's got 2 shield, so that automatically nullifies 2 of the 5 damage. So we move the thing 1, 2, 3, and he's got 4 life left. That's the end of the first round. Okay, the beginning of the second round. We've only got 2 cards left in our action draw pile. The rest are on cooldown. So until the start of the next round, we'll only have 2 cards to play with. This is one of the problems with sacrificing all your cards to skill checks during exploration. So players always go first. We can add 2 shield, apply 2 feeble to the next target, deal 2 damage, and apply 2 ravage. Now ravage in this game is like poison, and the Scion, most of his class cards are built to apply poison, and other cards synergize off this ravage type damage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my action card or my weapon card, which is right here, and I can activate the mastery tick with focus. Now I'm a focus based character, so all of my cards have focus. I'm going to use this card because I can use this one for shield. So this card goes to the cooldown. I activate the mastery action of that, which allows me to move 2, deal 2 damage to 2 units. So I'm not going to move, but I am going to deal 2 damage to these enemy units. Now before we do that, we have to swap the slides out. So we was on 4. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. 4 damage, so we remove this slide, replace it with a new slide. We remove this slide, replace it with a new slide. So this is a whole new set of actions from the enemy. We check out initiative 14, initiative 16, so the same initiative. So this guy's going to go first. But he's not going to go. We're still actually in our first player's round. So he's got 2 defense, and this one's got 2 defense. So our weapon attack did 2 and does 0 damage. Both of them absorb all the damage that our player was going to deal. Now we go to the 16. He's got the top initiative. He doesn't need to move. He's already adjacent. He deals 1 damage. This one doesn't move. He deals 1 damage. But we've got 2 shield from this card. So we use this card and apply 2 shield. So that shield nullifies both points of attacking damage. That is 2 rounds of combat in EOE, and it explains the AI behavior sheet as well as the action cards and the equipment cards. There's also armor cards that can be crafted, and there are implants that can be crafted. And I'll get to that later. So now we're back in the lab. We've successfully completed all the prerequisites required to turn the page, assuming we were victorious in combat. So we go to the next page. These are our post-resolution observations. We can search the lab for material or any other useful items laying out in the open. You notice several banks of biometric security lockers around the perimeter. A single large transparent computer screen hangs from the room's central span. You feel it would be possible to salvage for parts if so inclined. There's likely some material you could use for crafting in the surrounding lab equipment if you spent the time to find it. So these are skill checks, and this is how you accumulate the elements and schematics and other resources required to craft equipment. This first skill check doesn't require any ticks. You just automatically get 1 resource, 1 schematic, and you get 1 sequence point. Now sequence points are your base action cards. So for every sequence point you get to draw any card you want, but they're all shuffled in random. So you can either take the sequence point now or save it up and potentially get a better action card, because the game is actually set up and there'll be 3 different or actually 4 different levels of action cards. So you start off with your regular level 1, and then farther in the game you'll get to the next level cards, and then the next level. So it really benefits you to actually save up these sequence points so you can purchase higher level cards. So we're going to get our first resource, and this is our resource board and player board. This is where we gather elements for crafting equipment. So I'm going to get one iron as an external component. Iron is, and just like the action cards, there's 4 different levels of equipment cards. You've got your civilian class, military class, prototype class, and exotic or alien class. That's your 4 different classes. And depending on what level schematics that you pick up, that determines what level equipment you're able to craft. These are the 4 different levels. So this would be for civilian class equipment, uses this first column. Military class uses the second column. Prototype class is the third column, and then the alien class is the fourth column. There's also equipment that can be found and not crafted for special missions and different NPC quests that you'll get later on in the game. So we get one level 1 schematic, and there's a card that represents the schematics. Build your character based on the equipment available and what ticks you are proficient with, like your intellect and innate based equipment would be kind of what you would want to build your character around. The rest of these are tick based skill checks. So at the beginning of each observation phase we get to draw 3 cards. And these cards are used to perform skill checks. So we don't have might. We don't have a lot of might available to us, so we're not going to be able to do this one. We do have a lot of focus, so we can use 1 focus, and it's better to use the cards that don't use 3, or it's better to use the base action cards before you use these, because most of these can be used. You can double up on skill checks to require different ticks. So we're going to use 1 focus here. That'll go back in our cooldown pile. And I'm going to get a lithium power element. Then I'm going to use 2 intellect to try to tear down this computer screen and dismantle it. So I've got an intellect here and an intellect here. Those go to the discard pile. These are the directions. The way directions works is this is kind of your observation from where you can go next. So the hallway outside trails off in 2 directions. Left toward the elevator lobby and right along a long white hallway. At the end of the hallway you see a single heavy metal door with a small glass window. Above it sits a red illuminated sign of unknown language. It seems to be a warning of some kind. So we refer back to the laboratory exploration tile. 3 is the only way that we can go. So we look through the tiles till we find 3. 3 connects to the bottom. Now we refer to 3 in the codex. So unusual animated hieroglyphic symbols mark different signs and several red and black plaques as you reach the dead end. A strange omnidirectional light seeps out of a hidden crevice along the ceiling. The entire layout of the building just seems off. From its absence of hard corners or joints to its entirely seamless design, it was as if the whole place was dropped from a big injection mold. Small arching doors are placed every 15 feet or so, too small for any normal-sized human to use effectively. You run your fingers along the outer casing and marvel at the precision in its construction. Inspecting the strange symbols reveals no immediate interpretation. Despite your loss of memory, it still seems like a translation should be possible if you never knew it. Unfortunately, you haven't got a clue, as this place is all too alien in every sense of the word. Turning to the sign to the closest wall, opposite the elevator's direction, is a heavy circular gray door, and on its face is a small viewing window. From it spills cool, flickering white light onto the deep recessed casing. Turn page. So there's no prerequisite events for this. There's no encounter. There's no skill checks. We go directly to the observations. So if you have a network key card, access to the round door would be a breeze. Draw legacy card 003. So we don't have the access, the network key card. So the only other thing we can do is we can, from the visions, you can draft the information usable item. Well, we don't have any more cards to use. So we go directly to the directions. Without the network key, access is impossible because the door is magnetically sealed. You look in and see only the inky shadows of hanging cords and long square cabinets, as if it were piled in with little consideration. The only other option is head back to the lab or down the hallway. So 9 would be to this place that we don't have access to. 2 would be the elevator lobby. So this should have said head back in the other direction toward the elevator lobby. But so this is 2. We refer to the elevator lobby, and it's got a description, another encounter, and then it leads to more observations and skill checks, and then directions, and that's how the game plays out. There's 7 chapters of these, and there's 10 or 11 scenes in each chapter. So that gives you an idea of the scale of the game. I just wanted to give you a sneak peek of what it looks like after you completed the chapter. You've gone from one side of the board to the other, and there's non-player character missions that you have to go on, and you have to find items and hidden parts of the board to get into other parts. And the game is also set up so you can almost play the whole thing without getting into any encounters. There's a lot of twists and turns. This is a really interesting part of the game that's taken me a long time to flesh out.